Another Clinton email scandal. Trying to deflect attention from it, the Democratic nominee attacks Donald Trump's economic agenda. Fire deaths confirmed. A suburban Washington apartment fire leaves at least 2 dead. Trump Tower climber nabbed. New York City police catch a Virginia man 21 stories up the Manhattan skyscraper. And let's do lunch. Pope Francis shares lunch with Syrian refugees who were brought to Italy at his urging. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, August 11th, 2016.
My mission in the White House will be to make our economy work for everyone, not just those at the top.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. Hillary Clinton unveiling her economic agenda in Warren, Michigan today. Recently released emails raise questions about links between the Clinton State Department and the Clinton Family Foundation. Donald Trump accuses Hillary Clinton of a pay-for-play scheme. Jason Calvi is here tonight with more. Jason?
Brian, some are speculating how that relationship may have impacted Clinton's handling of the Boko Haram terrorists. The just-released emails are fueling more controversy. Emails have plagued Hillary Clinton's campaign before it even began.
What was Hillary Clinton hiding? She was hiding this.
Conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch released about 300 pages of State Department emails this week. Some raise questions if favors were given to Clinton donors.
They show that the Clinton Foundation, if you were a donor to the Clinton Foundation or a friend or associate, you had an in with the State Department. And that wasn't appropriate. It was contrary to promises made by Mrs. Clinton.
In one email, Clinton Foundation's Doug Band tries to connect Lebanese-Nigerian billionaire Gilbert Shigori with a State Department official. Band wrote, "As you know, he's a key guy there and to us, and is loved in Lebanon. Very important." Journalist J.C. Derrick says Shigori pledged $1 billion to the Clinton Global Initiative.
So what this proves is, A, he had a direct line to the State Department through the Clinton Foundation, and B, that he was using that connection, that access, to influence a political situation in Lebanon. And there's no evidence to suggest he wouldn't have done the same thing in Nigeria.
Boko Haram's terror in Nigeria exploded during Clinton's time as Secretary of State. She never formally named it a terrorist group. Derrick says that designation would have been bad for Shigori's business.
The defense and intelligence communities, and even a lot of people within the State Department, really wanted the foreign terrorist organization designation for Boko Haram, and they weren't getting it, and it was really a surprise for a lot of people.
The United States finally did name Boko Haram a foreign terrorist organization in 2013. That was under John Kerry after Clinton resigned as secretary. Her campaign says Hillary Clinton never took action as Secretary of State because of the donations to the Clinton Foundation. Brian?
Thank you, Jason. And Donald Trump speaks to Christian leaders today at an event in Florida.
Whatever you can do, this will be an election that will go down in the history books, and for the evangelicals, for the Christians, for everybody.
Trump asked the pastors to help get out the vote in Utah, admitting his campaign is struggling there, a state Republicans have owned for decades. Molly Hemingway is senior editor at The Federalist. Today in Michigan, Hillary Clinton called Donald Trump's plan for child care for families a handout to the wealthy. These are her words, transparently designed for rich people. Do you buy that?
I don't know how she can say that it was transparently designed for one group of people, because the details haven't actually been released yet. He said that he wants to release an economic plan that allows all parents to deduct the average child care expenses that they have, but he wouldn't release the specifics for a few weeks. So we'll have to wait and see when the actual detailed policy proposal comes out.
Let's look at media coverage of this campaign. Do Trump and Clinton get similar scrutiny from the media?
I don't think anyone could argue that the media are playing each side evenly in this case. Every single little thing that Donald Trump says seems to result in the media going into histrionics, whereas Hillary Clinton is treated as a more ordinary candidate, and they follow her lead in how they cover her campaign.
Well, she is more ordinary. Trump, doesn't he ask for it when he makes statements like President Obama and Hillary Clinton are founder and co-founder of the Islamic State group.
On the one hand, you could say that his big campaign push during the primary was that he would do a really good job of handling the media. So yes, he is asking for it if he can't control the way the media respond to him. At the same time, it seems that they're being hyper-literal in how they analyze his statements in a way that they didn't do with various Obama officials or Clinton when they say that, for instance, he is ISIS's best recruiter. Now, I don't think President Obama meant that literally, and they didn't take him literally. They shouldn't take him literally in this case.
Yeah, I'm sure he wasn't being literal. But doesn't Trump's campaign really depend on this media coverage? He's not spending nearly the amount of money in paid ads, so might this be just part of his strategy?
He's not spending any money in paid ads, so it all depends on his media interaction. At times that has served him very well. We're always talking about him. We're always covering his latest statement that excites people and whatnot. At the same time, these have been a bad few weeks for Hillary Clinton, and if you take attention away from her various scandals, dealing with her foundation, her email server scandal and whatnot, that's not going to help his campaign.
They may want to tweak that strategy. Let's talk about objectivity. Have you seen objectivity change in the coverage of politics over the years?
Oh, I mean, certainly 100 years ago, people didn't even pretend that they were going to be objective in how they covered candidates. In recent decades, that has been an ideal. A lot of journalists say they aim for objectivity. It's true that in recent decades, people haven't seen that objectivity actually play out. And in this election, you have media professionals just openly admitting that they think Donald Trump is a threat and that it's their job to fight him. So you're seeing a very different approach in this campaign, even compared to Mitt Romney.
All right. From the Federalist, Molly Hemingway. It's good to see you, Molly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. A Mississippi woman who tried to disguise a trip to join ISIS as her honeymoon is sentenced to 12 years in prison on a terrorism charge. Vicksburg native Jalen Young pleaded guilty in March to one count of conspiring to provide material support to a terrorist organization. Her fiancé pleaded guilty to a similar charge. He will be sentenced August 24th. A suspect is dead after Canada's National Police Force thwarts what was believed to be a suicide bomb plot. A senior Canadian police official says the suspect planned to carry out a suicide bombing in a public area. They say he's a man in his mid-20s, originally from Winnipeg. Details of his death are not being released. Germany's interior minister proposes stripping dual nationals who fight for extremist groups abroad of their German citizenship. He says he wants to make it easier to deport foreigners deemed to be dangerous. The proposal would make promoting terrorism a criminal offense. Germany may also start screening the public social media profiles of some of the people being admitted to that country. There are claims a deadly Syrian government airstrike on opposition forces in Aleppo was a chlorine gas attack. A Syrian rescue worker and opposition activists are making the claims. A video posted online by the Aleppo Media Center was said to be filmed in Aleppo Wednesday. A man with an oxygen mask lying on a hospital gurney describes the smell of gas and people gasping for breath right after that attack. Pope Francis has lunch with a group of Syrian refugees he personally brought to Italy. In April, Francis brought 12 refugees back with him from Lesbos, Greece on the papal plane. He says it was in keeping with the message of humanity he wants to send to the world. At lunch, the kids gave the Holy Father some of their drawings. He brought them toys and other gifts. The refugees receive housing in Rome through a Catholic charity. It's been nearly 5 months now since the State Department declared the persecution of Christians and other religious minorities in the Middle East genocide. Rabbi David Saperstein is America's ambassador at large for international religious freedom. I asked him if any real change has come from that designation.
Actually, long before the designation, we began to act in a forceful and effective way that as though there had been a genocide determination by putting together the international military force to support troops on the ground from Iraq and the Peshmerga from Kurdistan region of Iraq, and to put together from the air the 67 countries now who are working to try to undercut and degrade and eviscerate the presence of ISIL in those areas. But over and above that, the Secretary gave us a challenge: try to find out what will be necessary to allow groups, once ISIL's gone, to return to their homes. So we've been engaged in a range of activities, protecting cultural heritage, setting up mechanisms for security on which the minorities can rely, rebuilding the, getting plans in place to rebuild the infrastructure, the utilities and schools and health facilities in the area. So there's a great deal of an undertaking that has to be set in motion now, so there isn't a vacuum after ISIL is pushed out that will descend into a renewed round of sectarian violence.
Is it possible for displaced Christians to return safely to their homeland, maintain their heritage over time?
I truly believe that there is, and that's what we have been working on. So, you know, right now, for the first time, we see that some of the defense forces of the local Christian communities that are willing to live with under the control of the Iraqi government or cooperatively integrated with the Peshmerga are now being trained. And that is an encouraging sign. So these are people that will help maintain security when they go home. And as I said, we just pulled together, we're planning to how to rebuild the area in a way that will give them security and opportunity. We just held a conference of 30 countries that my office put together and international agencies to try and map out who will be doing what and what are the steps necessary to allow groups to return safely there. And the U.S. Week before our conference hosted another even larger conference that raised $2 billion towards the reconstruction of the areas here. There is a lot of goodwill to make it possible for the Christian community to return to their historic homelands that they lived in for nearly 2 millennia and represents the broad, rich, pluralistic tapestry of Iraq. I believe the Iraq people want to maintain that tapestry, and we want to do everything possible to allow Christians and other minorities to be able to return with safety and hope and opportunity for themselves, their families, and their children in a new and different Iraq.
It sounds like since your appointment a year and a half ago, there has been great progress. Rabbi David Saperstein, thank you so much for joining us from the State Department tonight. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
The ambassador speaking with us yesterday. At least 2 people die, dozens are injured, or several dozen injured, in an overnight fire and a partial collapse of an apartment building in Silver Spring, Maryland. Look at this blazing fire. Firefighters converged on the scene right around midnight in the Washington, D.C. suburb. They rescued several people from the upper floors of the building. Some witnesses reported hearing an explosion. Roughly 24 people, including 2 firefighters, were injured. The Obama administration will not reclassify marijuana. It will remain on the list of most dangerous drugs. The Drug Enforcement Administration says marijuana is still a drug with, quote, no accepted medical use in the United States. The agency is opening the door, though, to further medical research. It's expanding the number of agencies that can legally grow marijuana for research purposes. The New York Police Department now identifying the man who scaled the Trump Tower using suction cups. That looks dangerous. 19-year-old Stephen Rogeda of Great Falls, Virginia, is charged with reckless endangerment and criminal trespass. He said he wanted a private audience with Donald Trump. He spent hours scaling the building Wednesday before police grabbed him through a window on the 21st floor. That tower is Trump's presidential campaign headquarters. He runs his business from there, and he also lives there. He was away on Wednesday. Coming up, we look into allegations military intelligence may have been manipulated in the war on terror. And will Japan's elderly emperor be allowed to step down? We discuss. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday evening. I'm Brian Patrick, and the Pentagon estimates roughly 45,000 ISIS terrorists have been killed since coalition operations began more than 2 years ago. But a new congressional report alleges U.S. military officials have painted a picture much rosier than the reality. As ISIS invaded Ramadi last year, Iraqi troops fled the city, all seemingly catching the Pentagon off guard.
They showed that failure of a will to fight.
But there may be evidence it should not have been a surprise.
or political leadership believed certain things, and they didn't want to change those beliefs. Intelligence analysts looked at empirical evidence. They tried to bring that intelligence to the attention of senior leaders, and that effort appears to have been rejected.
Now an investigation by Republican congressional members into a whistleblower complaint finds intelligence was altered to show more progress against ISIS than the intelligence warranted. Congressional staffers tell CNN senior military intelligence officials at the U.S. Central Command, which was running the war, did edit and change intelligence reports. It's not clear if there was political pressure to do so. Investigators found commanders decided to rely on operational reports from the front lines, resulting in analysis that was more positive regarding both Iraqi forces and ISIS.
The operational reports that are passed up the chain of command really reflect our side of the battle. They don't necessarily reflect what the enemy is doing, or if they show that, they're only going to show a part of that.
Different views of the intelligence have erupted into the public arena, according to congressional staffers. March 3, 2015, the then head of Central Command spoke of ISIS in personal terms, referring to it as he.
The fact is that he can no longer do what he did at the outset, which is to seize and to hold new territory. He has assumed a defensive crouch in Iraq.
10 days later, the director of the CIA had a more dire view.
ISIL is well armed and well financed. Its fighters are disciplined, committed, and battle hardened.
Then in May 2015, ISIS seized Ramadi. It would be months before Iraqi forces took the city back. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe addresses his nation this week following a rare televised speech by the Emperor Akihito. The emperor said if his failing health worsens, he fears he will not be able to fulfill his duties. Abe saying that he will think very seriously about what we can do in order to ease the emperor's burden. It is only the third time a Japanese emperor has spoken to the public on television or radio. Yuki Tatsumi is Senior Associate of the East Asia Program at the Stimson Center, a bipartisan think tank here in D.C. Why would Akihito just not step down?
Because there is no process that's in place for him to step down. For last 200 years or so, only time that emperor change is he passes away. So there is no process that he can actually take. And then another thing is his entire being, the way he lives, the way he conducts his daily life, is determined by very, very minute detail by the Japan's domestic law called Imperial House Law. And there is absolutely no clause that lays out how he can do this. So he can say he's considering of stepping down, but then people around him will then have to figure out whether it is okay for him to do so, and if it is okay at the end of the day, how he would do it.
So would a law have to be changed?
Yes, the law has to be changed. Constitution doesn't have to, but this Imperial House Law definitely needs to be changed.
What parallels do you see between Emperor Akihito and Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI?
If Emperor Akihito does step down, he will be in the very unique place that former Pope Benedict XVI will be. He will probably be called the former emperor, but then he is probably the first emperor in the modern Japanese history to step down while he is alive. So it's a very unique situation for Japanese society to address.
How do the Japanese people see this emperor? What legacy might he leave?
I think two things. One, he was very, very committed to stay true to the spirit of a Japanese constitution. He's supposed to be the symbol of the country of Japan, symbol of all the positive virtue and norms that Japan represents, like politeness, amenity, friendliness. So he's a symbol of that. So he tries very hard to do that. He also, another thing is that he tried very hard to connect with the public. His father, although very much revered, was a very formal figure. I remember growing up listening to his father's news about very formal setting. He only said a few formal remarks every now and then. But this emperor and his wife, Empress Michiko, really tried to bring themselves closer and share their experiences with them.
The emperor of the people.
Yes.
Yuki Tatsumi, thanks for joining us from the Stimson Center.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, going for the gold, an update on the 2016 Olympics. And a colorful mystery in Rio has athletes and spectators talking. On this 11th of August, St. Clare of Assisi, a friend and follower of St. Francis, is remembered on the church calendar. EWTN foundress Mother Angelica had great devotion to Clare, the patron saint of television. Mother, of course, founded the Poor Clares of Perpetual Adoration. Thanks for joining us this Thursday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Team USA forges ahead in Rio, leading in the medal count. Katie Ledecky led the U.S. to the gold last night in the women's 4x200 meter freestyle relay, her third gold medal of the Rio Olympics. Daryl Homer, who we profiled Wednesday, won a silver in fencing, beating Kazakhstan, Germany, and Iran. And tonight, roommates Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte race against each other for the final time in the 200-meter individual medley. The Americans are the top two all-time performers in the event. Sam Stitt, an Olympic rower, competed in the 2008 Summer Games in Beijing. What's your take, Sam, on this doping scandal and the athletes' reaction to it?
Well, I think there's two parts to this. With the doping, obviously it's illegal. I mean, you don't see events where they start one athlete before the other. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The other one was Lily King's reaction to it. I think on social media, before we take off for the Olympics, they always tell you, don't react in the heat of the moment. Don't go out and do something like that. Do I think she was justified? Yes. My gut reaction says I would have probably reacted the same way. Should she have gone on social media? Maybe not, but again, she's an athlete. She did what she wanted to.
Well, you're quite the athlete and a big one at that, 6'6". As a rower, is that a liability or is it an asset?
Actually, I'm pretty average for a rower. It's all about leverage in our sport. So normally, everybody's like, oh, how do you fit in that small boat and whatnot? But yeah, no, we're all tall, we're all uncoordinated. We're supposed to be basketball players, but, that's not going to happen.
Got lots of leverage. Okay. So when you watch the Olympics, what are you looking for?
Well, for me, when I watch the Olympics, it kind of does bring back a little bit of stress. Being able to compete at the Olympics, it's basically the pinnacle of your career. You're at the highest level of competition. So when I watch it, I get a little stressed out. I do see my friends. There are a few people that I've trained with in the past that are at the Olympics right now. So for me, it's kind of stressful. When they do well, I'm elated. It's kind of going through the same emotions as a family member would.
Yeah, so you're living through it almost again. How do you stay focused as an athlete with all the hype that surrounds the Olympics?
Well, I mean, any athlete that's at the Olympics, it's not their first race. I can tell you right now, they've been doing this for years and years and years, and very rarely do you see them lose focus because, they've done it before. They've been at smaller races, and while, again, this is, front stage in front of the whole world, you're still able to zone in and basically go through the same motions that you've done multiple times before.
Olympic rower Sam Stitt, thanks for being with us, Sam. Appreciate it. Well, what's causing the water in two Olympic pools to change from bright blue to a murky green? That's a question a lot of people are asking in Rio. A mysterious green pool at the Summer Olympics in Rio creates concern. Now a second pool is turning green. Earlier this week, pictures began appearing showing the diving pool at Maria Lenk Aquatic Center had turned murky green. The water polo pool next to it remained a brilliant blue. By Wednesday, though, that pool also started turning green. Team officials and fans began wondering what was going on.
The first thing I noticed was the diving pool was bright green and the water polo pool was a slightly less bright color of green.
Yesterday on social media we saw the picture of the diving pool with the really green water, and then when we walked in today we were like, wow, it really is really green.
The International Olympic Committee tried to clear things up.
Mid-afternoon there was a sudden decrease in the alkalinity of the diving pool first, and that's the main reason for the color has been changed.
The IOC says the problem is being fixed, insisting the quality of the water never put athletes in danger.
As long as the players are okay, who cares what the color of the water is? Maybe it's food coloring.
The games end in Rio a week from Sunday on August 21st. And until tomorrow, when we have our EWTN News Nightly Summer Special, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night. May God bless you.